Hey guys, we're going to strip away some of the traditional YouTube tropes like the excited intro bumper and the theme and the maybe a little bit of the exaggerated personality that they tell you got to do on YouTube. We're going to cut that. We're going to make it kind of unplugged today on this episode so that we can have like maybe a fair kind of grown-up conversation, if you will, about a subject that is possibly one of the most hotly debated, divisive, and occasionally toxic subjects in video game collecting, particularly retro game collecting, but really all video game collecting. And that's, of course, the topic of video game reselling and video game resellers and those who create content on YouTube about the subject of buying and selling video games. There's a lot of I feel like it's a never-ending struggle between those who are vehemently opposed to reselling of video games in a general sense, those who are wildly supportive of the practice, and those who are kind of somewhere in the middle, but probably increasingly frustrated with the never-ending battle around them that kind of, I feel like, almost distracts from people being able to enjoy the fun of collecting and playing video games. I've done a lot of soul searching and thought about this subject over the past set of months because I've seen what feels to me like an increase in not just content and discussion about video game reselling, but we've now seen a rise, I think, in content creators that are really very animated and almost over the top in doing a lot of like negative takedowns on resellers and the concept of reselling, and it's almost become now a new subgenre of the YouTube reseller haters. And it's just interesting because while it seems to get a lot of attention and traffic, it's like the old proverbial people cluster up to look at a car crash. I don't think it's really moving anyone forward in terms of the discussion and the subject in general. I don't think that folks that are making really angry, vitriolic content, pro or against reselling, are winning anyone over. They just really seem to be expending a lot of energy in whether or not they're trying to get attention by doing it or it's just their natural way of approaching things. Again, it's sort of not moving anything forward, and it just seems like it's getting us trapped in this cycle of negativity and toxicity. So I think there's room here to have a more reasoned, calm discussion about why there are a lot of video game reseller content creators that are really they really rub people the wrong way, and then by extension, I think, give the general concept of buying and reselling video games, I'm not know if a bad name is what I'm looking for, but a worse name than it otherwise would have, right? And so, like I said, I've done a lot of thinking about this, and I think I've come upon what I think are 2 points that I've yet to hear anyone make in the countless conversations on YouTube about video game reselling, of which this is yet another one. But I think they're interesting points that, again, haven't been said out loud yet, and might add a little bit of clarity collectively to folks on the subject. The first point, and it's going to start by, it's something, a very specific behavior that I want to observe, that I see a lot in YouTube yard sale, estate sale, video game reselling videos, pickup videos, game hunting videos, whatever you want to call them. I want to define a very specific behavior and then zoom out a little bit and kind of explain why I think it is a big factor in influencing the emotional response that these video game resellers are getting their content. So here's the specific behavior, and I've seen it time and time again. Video game reseller has their GoPro or their handheld or somebody else holding the camera, and they go up the driveway in a garage sale, and they go and they're darting around. They look, maybe they ask if you have any Nintendo tapes, and they spot a milk crate on the ground. And there's some video games in it, and they go through and they look through it and they find a video game that is, let's say, sells on the open markets for about $100. and they see that either it doesn't have a price on it, or let's say it's priced for $5. And they go up to the seller and either fork over the $5 or ask if they could have it for $5, and the seller, who just doesn't know video games, says that's fine, and then they purchase the game. And then as they are walking back down the driveway, they're so consumed with excitement, and they're so focused on the financial aspect of this transaction, the financial gain as a reseller that they're going to get, that they end up basically, what I'll say, spiking the football, openly talking about how great this deal was, that they just got a $100 game for $5. Oftentimes I see it even not even waiting to be out of earshot of the person that sold it to them. And I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to freeze frame. Every time you've seen that type of behavior in one of these videos, again, the spiking the football in the end zone celebration. You haven't left the seller's property yet. You're not in your vehicle. You're not back to your home base, but you're already talking about how much money you're going to make. I want you to stop and think about a few things here for a second. It comes across to the viewer is kind of disrespectful to the seller. It's very cold. It's very I'll go out and say antisocial. It really depersonalizes the counterparty to your transaction. It makes them look silly in a public setting they didn't ask to be in, whether you showed their face or not. I don't think that a lot of these creators realize the impact that this has. I think they may actually see it the other way. They may think that the audience wants braggadocio. They want this, and there may be a small amount of like-minded, wannabe resellers that may think that way. But I think the much larger audience that's also consuming this content, that are collectors, that are people who love these games that are being transacted, see it as repugnant. And I think that's a big part of where you see this vitriol, this limbic response to video game lovers, to the content and the people, and to a larger extent ends up permeating to the concept of reselling itself. That it is an issue. I think that you are not really leaving anything on the table by not having that element of what you do. There's nothing wrong with going and having your content where you found a really cool game and you picked it up, it was a great deal, and then eventually, you continue on to other sales, but you wait and block off the conversation, if you absolutely must, kind of celebrate the profit margin you're going to have. At least put it at the end of the video, or in a place where the viewers are not still full of the feelings of seeing the seller and, maybe identifying with them, because everyone at the end of the day has had to sell video games they didn't want to, under circumstances they didn't want to. You had a medical bill, you needed to pay something, a debt or what have you, and you had to sell your games, and maybe you had to sell them for less than they were worth. So at the end of the day, realize that your audience is ultimately probably going to identify on some level with that seller, especially if they didn't really know what they had. And it's very important to be sensitive to that. It's very important to be sensitive to that. So, I would say, and I would actually, I'm challenging, but I'm suggesting to the big name YouTube video game reseller video makers, they consider softening that content a little bit in terms of, I'm not saying you have to completely de-emphasize, again, talking about the expectations you're going to get financially, but at least kind of segment it out so that you're not really overlaying your celebration over someone else's lack of knowledge and, quite frankly, misfortune. It doesn't land well with anyone except the faithful resellers. And quite frankly, it does you no good to be vilified by the larger population. It makes your job more difficult at the end of the day. So I guess it's food for thought here. And again, I wanted to present this in a way that wasn't loud and obnoxious. I'm not looking to call anyone out. Again, I'm not looking to start internet feuds with people. I'm not going to use swear words and things like that. But I think it's important that we have this conversation and just kind of be honest about that element of it. I said there was 2 points, and the second point kind of adjacent to this, right? And it's about the actual games themselves and the nostalgia people people have for them. I mean, look, here's the thing. When I see situations, again, going back to content creators making content about that video game they found that's worth $100, when the emphasis is entirely on this game is worth $100, man, and there's no respect or reflection or acknowledgement of the significance of that game and why it's $100. It's disrespectful to everyone in the audience that loves that game, that remembers fondly playing that game, or something about them they have an emotional connection to. And quite frankly, those who would like to get that game to help them have that nostalgia. You're doing two things. You're disrespecting their memory of it, and you're clearly stating your intention to make it more difficult for them to be able to afford getting the game. So I think that the way you soften this is, again, you can take that $100 game, and I think the way to approach this is to have at least spend a little time talking about what was special about this game. Acknowledgement and pay some respect to the folks who love that game and acknowledge the reasons they love that game. And even, maybe even if it's not entirely true, express your own affection for the game. I don't think anyone would really hurt if maybe you had a little white lie and you said, my best friend and I used to play this game back in the day, and it was just a cool thing to do. And it's really cool that now I'm going to have a chance to find this a new home to someone who loved it. And yes, I'll earn some money. As opposed to the current presentation of Complete in Box Super Smash Bros. $100, man. Like, that's not the approach. And I realize that's not word for word, but it's the vibe, right? It's the vibe. It's the feeling when it's all about, there's no honor given to the games. It's just strictly they're a piece of meat at auction to the highest bidder. So that's the second point. It's not just how you are approaching that content on site at the sale. It's in general how you're looking at it in the terms of your overall content. As a reseller, you're getting that vibe as being like that greedy person, because no one ever sees you talking about the games. No one ever sees you show any affection or respect for them. And if there's one thing I can say about video game collectors is they have a lot of love and respect for the games that they love and care about. So maybe they'll be a little less prickly about what you're up to if you meet them halfway. And I think maybe that's the key, right? Meet them halfway. Meet the collectors halfway. Don't make it entirely about the financial transaction. Give it an equal dose of, again, love and respect for the source material, and a gentle reflection on how blessed you were that you were able to be in the right place at the right time to get those games for a great deal. And it's all about language. Instead of saying, man, I'm going to make $95 profit, you could say the same thing by saying, now I'm going to get a chance to get this in the home of a collector who really wants this game and make a little money for myself. And that's the thing. I think that one of the reasons why this continues to go back and forth, this never-ending conversation, is because you got people on both sides of this subject yelling over each other at the top of their lungs, and it's just not going to get anywhere. I think that conversations like the one we're having right now, where we just calmly go through and talk about how different people are emotionally interacting with this content and how it gets to the larger feelings that people have of resellers in general, I think is something that's kind of been missed. And I'm hoping this conversation was a good first step in bringing these things to the table. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how you feel in the comments about this. I think we're going to have a fun conversation. Let's keep it, again, respectful, friendly, and I think we'll accomplish a lot by exchanging ideas there. So there you go. Well, folks, thank you as always. If you enjoyed this content, if you enjoyed the stuff I make in general, and you haven't done so yet, please like and subscribe. You know the drill, how that all works on YouTube, and I appreciate that. Well, folks, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time on It's All Duggan Games.